아이고, 스트롱 보이. 스트롱 보이. 왜? 이런 소리 처음 들어봤어? 데이비사, 너는 스트롱 보이야. 할머니가 본 사람 중에서 제일 스트롱 보이야.
할머니,
어?
피피는 무슨 맛이에요?
빵알루미.
Hi, and welcome to the discussion of The Night Before, a movie podcast where my husband and I discuss what we have watched the night before. We choose a local spot, typically a brewery, coffee shop, sometimes a kombucha shop.
Yeah, we choose a spot the next day, the next morning.
The next morning.
Or afternoon, as
when we
in this
wake up the
case.
next morning. And we discuss our thoughts about the movie, our agreements, disagreements, point of view, whatever comes up about the movie.
Yeah, because when the movie finishes, it's typically later at night. It was like, I don't know, it wasn't too late last night. It was like 11-ish,
But we were tired.
11:30, but it was still too late to kind of talk about a movie. It gives us time to digest it. And we have found in the past, prior to this podcast, is because this is only episode number 2. We did a film called Purple Noon recently.
Last time.
And that was based on the Townsend Mr. Ripley, the novel, and then eventually remade. But no, we have found in the past that we talk about movies over coffee or over drinks the following day. Like, hey,
When
what'd
we
you
have
think of that
time
movie?
alone together.
Yeah, hey, what'd you think of that film?
Right.
Right? And then we just started talking about it. And thus, the night before was born.
Yes.
It's a marriage, term picked purposely, between our love of film as well as
Our
coffee
love
shops.
of being together, doing things local,
But,
hanging out.
hanging out at breweries, hanging out at coffee shops, hanging out at various places. So today we found ourselves again in Tampa, Florida. It's funny how we always find ourselves in Tampa, Florida at these things. And last time we were at a place, what was the place called?
Flower Crown Kombucha.
Flower Crown Kombucha. And now we're at a place called Hidden Springs
Brewing.
Brewing, Hidden Springs. And conveniently, or coincidentally, it is
Right next door.
less than a block away from Flower Crown. It is a small little brewery that's been here for a while, a personal favorite of ours.
Yes, and we've been coming here for a while, so we're excited to come here and do our podcast. And we also took a long walk before this, but did not discuss the movie at all yet.
We haven't talked yet. And again, it's funny. The original concept for this was first thing in the morning, coffee shop chat, talk over a cup of coffee at a local coffee shop. We've yet to do the early morning coffee shop talk. This is later afternoon, post
Brewery.
getting morning stuff done, taking a walk, exploring the city, and now we're sitting down at Hidden Springs. We have a drink today. It's today.
Giant Space Lasers IPA.
It's like a double IPA. It's like a hazy double IPA, I believe.
Very good.
So we have that as well. We'll ignore this text message for things.
Work.
So anyway, we also saw a film last night, right?
We did. It was fun, too. I mean, it was a great film.
Oh, you liked it then? All
I
right.
did. I liked it.
And so the film we saw last night was
So right now we're on the mission to watch a bunch of Oscar films before the Oscars. Because it makes the Oscars so much more fun if we've seen them.
It seems like every year we have the mission to try to watch a lot of the Oscar
But
films.
this year we're going to do it.
Well, we're under the crunch. We have about a week left. We've seen over half of them. But so this week we saw the film Minari.
Yes.
About a Korean family that relocates to Arkansas. I think originally they were from Korea, but they spent some time in California, and then they left California and are settling in Arkansas as sort of a fresh start, hoping to to kind of, rebuild their family, build their finances, get kind of more independent than they work in like a little, they did it in California
Hatchery.
too.
Yeah.
They work in a hatchery where their job is simply just to identify the sex of chicks, but separating them between male and female, and that's their job all day. In Arkansas, they buy a little trailer. They buy a bunch of land, I guess from money they saved in California, and their hope is to turn this land into a farm. At least that's the husband's idea, to try to get things going. And though there is some struggle about assimilating into kind of rural Arkansas culture, it's really, and as Koreans in America, it's really not the main. It's one layer of the film, but it's more about a family and their struggles and what certain people want and need within the family
Yeah,
and
it's
their
more,
identities.
I think, like personal struggles. I mean, it's definitely about immigrants and, assimilating, but it's definitely more about personal struggles and even relationship struggles
Within the family itself.
within the family itself.
Yeah, they could have hit you over the head with the whole Korean family being in rural Arkansas, because that's what I thought the movie would be about. Like, primarily, like that would be the heavy-handed focus of it. What does it mean
Racism or whatnot.
to be? And there's really very little
There's
of that.
a little bit, but not. But it's, yeah.
But it tends to skew more towards just individuals' curiosity about Koreans and this Korean family, and there's never that scene of
Hate or...
oh yeah, you're the Korean family, you're the weirdos,
Right.
you're the
Right.
foreigners. That's not present in this movie, and instead it's really just a story about this family.
So,
And though they struggle in American culture, finding food that they like, even finding their place as Korean immigrants and Korean Americans, and even their place amongst other Koreans in the United States, there's that bigger issue.
So interestingly, I found out, after a little bit of research, the director, this is a semi-autobiographical of his life.
Let me see if I remember. Lee Isaac Chung,
Yeah.
the director. Yeah.
So he had a small period of time in his life, around 6-7 years old, that he
Keep going.
came to...
Sorry, my phone made a weird noise. And also, I'll say this before you interrupt you. For anybody listening, we're hanging out in a brewery.
So there's going to be noises.
Right now, there's Alice in Chains going over the music. It's packed. It's a Sunday afternoon. Not only is this
Sunday
place
fun day.
pretty crowded, we're tucked away in a nice little corner
Niche.
underneath a golden
tiger, a
tiger,
huge tiger.
decal on the wall. Check our Instagram to see pictures of that fun critter. There's dogs. Because, who...
There are dogs that might start barking at
Because
any
we all
moment.
know breweries double as dog parks.
Dog parks. Inside dog parks.
Inside dog parks.
Because this is urban. This is not like a
No.
grassy area.
So anyway, I just want to say that we're kind of speaking in directly into the microphones. I don't know what's bleeding in, what's not bleeding in. But we figure that's also the charm, and since we're in the early stages of this podcast.
It's the charm of the local hangout podcast.
That's the charm of it. It's just us hanging out. We'd normally be doing this anyway, hanging out
Talking
at
about
some
the
sort of
movies.
place, talking about movies, what we've done. And that's that. So I don't interrupt. So Lee Isaac
So
Chung,
this is
autobiography.
a very
Yeah.
small portion of his childhood, around the little boy that's in the movie's age, 6 to 8 years old.
Yeah. And the
He
kid's
lived
phenomenal,
in
by the way.
Arkansas. Actually, this happened to
Okay.
him. And the grandma is pulled from his grandma. They brought his grandma to live with them in a trailer. And so I thought it was interesting that this was the movie, even though he's made other movies, this was the movie that he was like waiting, kind of really pulled from his own life experiences and traumas, and even the parents. We'll talk about that later, but the parents' conflict and fighting and throwing the paper airplanes at the parents was something from his childhood
But
in real life.
I did like that scene when the parents were fighting, the husband and wife, mother and father, and the kids were like in there making paper, like, please stop fighting. They're writing on the paper airplanes, please stop fighting.
Please stop fighting.
And they're throwing the paper airplanes at them while they're fighting. And that's one thing I think about this movie. I think there's a lot of elements. I mean, obviously, one can't say, oh, yeah, I can relate to the Korean experience of movie. No. But I think this movie does a lot to play on nostalgia. And it does a lot to play on just thinking about one's struggles in childhood.
Yes.
Though we might not all have, again, didn't have an immigrant experience or didn't have, I personally lived in trailers in certain parts of my life.
We both related to it in certain ways.
And
you did when you saw the trailer. You're like, I lived in a trailer.
Yeah, I know that thing.
And I thought a lot of the grandma really touched home with me, even though clearly my grandmother's not Korean, but her personality and a lot of situations in the movie touched home with me.
That's what I mean.
I could relate to it.
You don't have to, though I think there's some strong commentary here just about the immigrant experience, and especially this idea of a story we don't hear much of, though we see a lot of there's a lot of Korean film you can point to over the years that is really, there's some really great stuff there. I mean, even like last year's Best Picture was Parasite.
Yeah.
So there's some stuff
That was good.
we can point to that's getting noticed. But I think as a film like this, the Korean experience and As Immigrants is really great. But I think broader than that, and what's so appealing is this film does a good job of tapping into struggles in a family, regardless of what they are, and things we can all identify with.
And supporting someone else's dream, kind of putting your own dream aside and supporting someone else's dream. I mean, that's a common experience in relationships and, at some point in any person's relationship sometimes.
Well, that's what I thought was good about it. One element, you have the father, Jacob, who wants this farm. He wants to start over in Arkansas. But it is a point of contention between him and his wife, Monica.
Yes.
She doesn't want to live in Arkansas. She doesn't want the farm. Her concern is her son, who has a heart condition, a heart murmur.
Her mom.
Her mother,
who's not there at
who's
first.
not there with them at the beginning. And then just being in a better, and being connected with Korean culture
families.
and society.
The kids have other Korean children to play with, and they have a church to go to, and a nice school, and a home.
And these are not truly, again, his son he does care about his son, obviously. But these are not the main concerns of the father.
No.
The main concerns of the father is providing for his family.
And fulfilling his dream.
Fulfilling his dream of being something. Not just working at the chicken hatchery forever.
Right.
Like, to be something that his family and his children can be proud of him for.
Right.
And that's the farm. But
Yes.
but he's not abandoning his culture. He wants his fruits and his vegetables to be Korean vegetables. Mm-hmm. He doesn't want, because he even gets pissed, like, hey, why aren't you doing Arkansas American stuff? And because the husband is kind of stubborn. And his stubbornness is what leads to a lot of their problems.
Right. His stubborn behavior, yeah.
And then some of his neglectfulness of overlooking his wife's needs is part of their problem. And that's why their marriage is crumbling through this whole time. But that's one of the things I thought was really good about this is just each person kind of finding their thing. And at the same time, these children are, especially the youngest, he's more American than Korean.
Well, yeah, that's the struggle.
So
right?
the children are, they're the mix between this, and they're symbolic of the mother and father. The mother who really wants to maintain more Korean lifestyle.
She's most Korean out of all of them.
Yeah, she speaks the most fluent Korean.
And her cultural behaviors are most Korean.
She cares more about the food and the spices that they can't get in Arkansas. She speaks fluent Korean but poor English. The husband, on the other hand, speaks fluent English, but his Korean's not as fluent as hers. He can speak it fine, but he's not as well as, and he's the one making connections with the locals,
Right.
where the wife is more concerned with connecting with any Koreans that are in the area.
She wants to keep the culture intact in her children.
And
And
the
her
children
children are very American.
And the children reflect that. The children struggle with their Korean heritage only because it's something that's been taught to them by the mother and then eventually the grandmother. But what they really want is more of the American experience because that's the world they're grown up in.
Right. Right.
And then so I think it's very just well written and well put together. The
It's well
struggles,
shown
the struggle
to
that the family's having, the husband and wife, are manifested in these two children.
Yes, definitely.
And even they play themselves together. The dad talks to the son later and says, like, you need to tell mom how much you love this place.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. The psychological.
Yeah, right. That little, let's
Back
use the
and
children
forth.
manipulation. Like, tell mom how much you love it. But at the
Yeah.
same time, the older daughter hears the arguments and understands it better. And
Well,
she's of the understanding of, hey, we might have to leave this place because mom's not happy.
And she's taken on like a caretaker role too, the oldest daughter, which is very like normal, you know, because then they can't be home. And she's like, we'll be fine. And we can't like, you know, just even with the paper airplanes, like she's saying, okay, write this. This is how we're going to take care of this problem. She kind of like takes on a caretaker role as an oldest daughter.
It's that she does. And yeah,
The expectation of women in like the Korean culture and American culture.
The mom kind of gives up a lot of her own wants and wishes and desires to care for the family. And then the daughter's following in those footsteps.
Yeah, the mom gives up the wants and wishes and desires, but honestly, the mom, like I was thinking, the mom's wishes, desires, goals are never defined, really.
And I think part of that is because she doesn't speak up for them until the very end of the
She
movie
doesn't.
when she confronts her husband and says, enough's enough. Like,
Yeah.
you have made out what your priorities are, and they're different than my priorities, and I don't know if this is...
Right.
I don't know. I don't feel that we're on the same page. And that's where the whole family gets in turmoil and it's all in jeopardy. But she saves those thoughts until the very end. She suffers in silence.
She does, but
most of it.
I think it shows throughout the movie it shows a really good like the director shows, or I don't know if it's the director or the writer or whatever, but shows her as a more not like a cultural stereotype of like a Korean woman, her or the grandmother. I think because they show her real. I think I connected with that in a way, like shows her real like feelings towards things and her like fluctuation of like, I want to support my husband, I love my family, but this makes me angry, or this I'm so lonely, or I'm so like, it doesn't a lot of times I think with Asian characters in general, or women, they show like as a more subservient role, and where she is like her goals aren't clearly defined, but she is not she's not portrayed as subservient.
No, from the very opening of the film, when the trailer has no staircase yet, no porch to get in, like it's
right.
raised off the ground on the bricks, he like offers to help pull her
And
in.
she's like, no,
and
I
she
can
like
do it.
squats his hands away and says, I have this. You know, leave me alone. I
she's
got
never
this.
she's always she does speak up of how she feels, and it's really like apparent how she feels about things throughout
No, from the
movie.
beginning, you can tell she's not happy about being in Arkansas. You even get the sense that he sort of, I don't want to say he lied, but he did not present the true picture of what they were about to embark on Arkansas.
Yeah. So the conflict in her is really well portrayed, but not stereotyped and being subservient, which I thought was good. And in the grandma either was not like, she was portrayed as like a Korean person, but not stereotyped into how like women Korean people can be stereotyped in.
Yeah, and I think that was one part that I thought was interesting, thinking about what we can all relate to as well. also in relationships and marriages. Early on, they have a big
Argument.
fight, a big fight. Part of it deals with potential tornado, and again the mom, Monica, I think is, or and I think the names are important too, like Jacob, Monica, Anne, and David are everybody's name. But then the grandma's name is Sunja.
Sunja, yeah.
Korean.
She maintains
Korean
her
name.
Korean name.
Everybody else is kind of more assuming this American identity. But anyway, there's this tornado. They live in a trailer. And the husband even says, like, look, like, we're going to have to leave soon because if a tornado hits here, we're gone. Like, this trailer is going to be whisked away. And that obviously you can tell strikes anxiety and fear into the mom. Like, what have we just gotten ourselves into? And then it's sort of the storm passes, or it's a tornado warning, not a watch. So he's like, oh, it's no big deal, right? And that kind of erupts into this big, huge fight. Following, why are we here? This isn't our dream. This is your dream, etc. And then the next morning, how is the fight resolved, right? That compromise of, well, your mother can come live with us then.
Oh,
part
right.
of it,
to
like,
appease.
right? Part of it, because in the morning, the two kids are talking at the breakfast table, which again, I think most of us can point to points in our life as children, listening to other adults fight, or because adults, married couples and adults
Argue.
you have to argue if you hope to resolve
Inevitably.
conflicts, right? I feel if you don't have, not that one should argue all the time, but like
Right. If you never argue, you're ignoring
something.
any kind of anything that comes
And
up.
children, as I think all of us, you have this thing where you dapper, you listen to the arguments,
They
and
listen.
it raises questions,
Yes.
right? And so they're talking in the morning about the two kids, like what's going to happen? Are we leaving? Are we moving? Is dad staying? Mom leaving? Like that talk, right? And they even asked mom about it in the morning, and she says, "Well, dad and I talked.
We're fine. It's fine. We're
It's
staying.
fine. We're staying, but
Grandma's
is
coming.
coming." Because that was part of mom's, one of her wants and wishes is not only does she worry about her son, she also worries about her mother.
Mm-hmm.
She hasn't seen her mother in years, and mom's getting older. And then family, as we said, family in Korean culture is important to her.
Well, taking care of your elders is a definite cultural.
So I just thought it was interesting that, not interesting, or it's just, again, that was another connection piece of, even though they didn't show the conversation and the discussion into the night,
You knew that was the appeasement.
we just saw the argument.
Or the settlement of the
Yeah,
argument.
we just saw the argument. But we know that those arguments, if you're a couple that's trying to work it out,
You have to make concessions.
and you talk into the night about it.
And what's going to make this person happy, and
And
what they
so-
need to feel like they have family, or to combat the loneliness, or whatever.
Yeah, and it's clearly something the father doesn't want, but he understands the importance of it.
Right.
And so and that's also where this movie shifts a bit. And I don't want to say it's like the
Definite shift.
comedic part of it, but it exposes more so the struggles in the family even more with the grandmother appearing. Because she is,
Not your typical grandma.
well, a typical American grandmother, as the youngest kid points out. She is just your Korean grandmother.
Right.
Who isn't assimilated into American culture.
Right. Well, and she curses, and she plays cards, and she's kind of quirky. She's not, and that's, I have to say, not to be like nostalgic, but when the scene where the grandma walks in the door.
At the very beginning, when she first shows up?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the mom is,
Oh, the mom's emotional because she hasn't seen her grandmother.
Emotional.
She hasn't seen her mother, we can assume, in at least 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, because the son she's never met the
son,
little boy.
the youngest son, has never seen her.
That scene, I'm like crying during it because she is so, like, she has this huge need for an attachment to home. And it's not, I don't think it's just missing her mom. It's just like a piece of her that she has, because that's what you do, right? When you're unhappy or you're lonely, you're grasping onto your family and the people that you're familiar with and make you feel safe and comfortable. And like, her reaction to her mom walking in the door was great. I think that was like one of the best scenes in the movie. Really.
Well, she was emotional, but the mother / grandmother, Sunja, was not emotional at all.
No.
She goes, "Oh, I see you get so sad upon seeing your mother," or something. She says something to that regard.
And again, not
She
to,
kind of dismisses it like,
Right.
"Oh, why are you getting so teary-eyed? Oh, you're so sad you haven't seen your mom in so long?"
and and again, I connected with that because my grandmother was so much like this grandmother. My grandmother cursed and had a drink every night and played cards and took us and did inappropriate things and was not like that. And it didn't matter. It didn't really matter. You know, like the mother never got mad at grandma for being that way. It didn't matter because that was what she knew as to be like home, you know? So it didn't matter that she wasn't saying the right thing to the kids or cussing in front of them, really. It didn't really matter.
The main one who had the problem with the grandmother, which also just did a nice job without really beating you over the head about it, was exposing two things: the generational gap and divide between the youngest kid, the child, the boy, and the grandmother, right? The generational divide. And then also the cultural divide. Because he's in there they're eating pasta and bananas and this sort of this Americanized food. And
Which she's
grandmother
never
has
tasted.
brought these traditional
spices
and food and teas and drinks and the only one being vocal about it and commenting on it is the young boy. That is disgusting. It's gross. He's showing her Mountain Dew versus, this like, what do they call it?
It's the water of the mountains.
The water from the mountain that's good for you. He comments on her, like, she smells like Korea.
She smells like Korea.
And it's like, and his sister's like, you don't even know what Korea smells like.
No.
Right? It's that exposure of just that they are both of similar culture, the same culture, but from two different worlds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? And that the mother even says something about American boys don't like to share, it's grandmother. Somebody says American boys don't like to share bedrooms
their room with their grandma.
With their grandmother. And the mom says, he's not an American boy, he's a Korean boy.
Right.
But he's not.
Which was so wonderful because, one of my jobs is to teach not Korean kids, but kids from China, so Asian children.
Yeah.
And 90% of my kids that I teach online live with their grandmother lives with them, grandmother and grandfather, and they all share a room with their grandmother. It is so normal, and it's not a stereotype that they put into the movie, I feel like, because I literally teach hundreds of kids, and I can say like 90 to 95% of them, and it's not a choice. That's what you do, you know? And it is funny that they say, like, he's not American, he's Korean, but he's not. I mean, he is Korean, but he's both.
No, he is both. And then that's the struggle and all, because he even spends time with an American boy and kind of gets the full kind of over-the-top American experience, right? The boy puts a cowboy hat and mocks cowboys, and they dip together and things like that.
Right.
But I think some of that...
like chewing tobacco.
Yeah, that's me. They put some stuff under their lip and whatnot. And that's a little over the top. But even then, and that's the closest you could point to some, like, quote, like, derogatory, racist things put towards them as Koreans. But even that, I didn't interpret it as more of a curiosity and unknown, right? There's a comment about his face being flat. And he says, my face is not flat. There's a scene with the daughter, and this is at church. The daughter and a young white girl her same age. She says, "Can I say some phrases, and maybe let me know when I say something that's in your language."
She's just saying, like, nonsense words.
Nonsense words that we all say for things. But nothing is ever mean or derogatory. And that was one thing I really liked about this movie, was the role of Will Patton, the like evangelical, born again, white
farmhand
that just helped.
Yes.
He helped transport a trailer to the family that they bought for the farm.
Okay, so the scene where the very poignant scene where he's carrying the cross down the road.
Well, he does two things. One, he's super religious.
Super evangelical.
He
talks in tongues
He
slightly.
talks in tongues occasionally. But he served in the Korean War.
Mm-hmm.
And he uses that as a point of connection, and he feels that the Lord put him
there.
Put
as
him
like
here
a
with
way
them
to make up for.
Well, it's whatever. Like, this is a reason.
Right.
Like, I've been to Korea. I helped.
We've connected.
Whatever.
For a reason. Yeah.
But he's a bit over the top. But everything in him is just like sweet natured, and
it's amazing how I think the family just like brings him in and accepts him, because he is off the wall. Like a lot of people would be.
He's never judgmental towards them.
Jacob is not, though. I mean, I'm saying the Korean family bringing him in.
The Korean thing, but I'm saying Paul, the character Will Patton, Paul, this evangelical religious guy, but he's even religious beyond religious people in this town.
Yeah.
Like, he every Sunday he does the Stations of the Cross and walks.
He
the
drags
length of
an
Jesus.
enormous cross down the road as like a self-sacrifice kind of.
Yeah, they don't go into
act.
details, but I'm sure it's the same amount of steps that Jesus took on his way to the crucifixion.
So that was part of the autobiographical thing that
okay.
Chung, the director,
Lee Isaac Chung,
when he lived in Arkansas when he was a child, there was a man who, it was very like, he wrote down all these vivid images that he had as a child, and there was a man that dragged this huge cross down the road, which I thought was really interesting. And it's such a like visual
and this character is even, he's mocked. The only people who mock and ridicule him are the locals of the area, right,
the people that are from Arkansas.
The children, especially, like the teenagers.
And they invite him in their home. The Korean family invites them in their home, and I think it's very touching how they treat him.
Like I said, I feel it would have been the easy route to say this movie of like, oh, Korean family, oh, American religious nut, right?
Right.
And kind of passing judgment on these folks. Or their conflict for him trying to convert them over to. But again, he's not even from what I gathered, he's not even a member of the local church.
No.
Like the Korean family, they try to go to the church because there is no Korean church in the area, despite the mom's hopes. There's just the local, some sort of Baptist type church. Which again, there's no negative experience there. You think it is going to be the negative experience, like, oh, please stand, you're new here, the preacher. He just says, you look beautiful, thanks for being here.
Yeah, I thought they're going to point them out in some way as being Korean, but they didn't. But it's
because again, this isn't, because that's, I think, that's to me, that's not the point of this movie. It's not.
No.
This point of this movie is this family itself finding its own identity, but then each member of the family finding its own identity within the family, right? Yes. And understanding that they are defined by the people they live with, right? That we so often seek for our own identity and break, even in our own lives, right? We break free and we feel like, people always say it, right? I feel like I'm losing myself. I feel like I'm losing me, right?
My identity within a marriage, within moving to a new city, within a job or anything.
And I felt the point of this movie was, yes, they need to find their own identities, but their identities are defined by the people in their family.
Right.
Like, by part of all of them. The grandmother, she is the extreme reminder of we are Korean at heart. And this is who we are. But then at the same time, the husband, we need to learn how to function and live in this world. And we need to kind of break our own path. Right? But then even the son of, I'm this kid who's defined by my heart murmur, and I can't do anything.
I can't run. I can't.
But by the close of the movie, he learns, that he can also push beyond those limitations. And as he pushes those, he actually gets better. He heals.
Yeah.
And so as he becomes his own self, and same thing for the mother, when she truly confronts her husband about this is how I feel, she understands that she is part of this unit, but at the same time, she has to make herself establish herself in it. And that the husband, his stubbornness, he has to be open to those around him.
Right.
And I think it takes all the events near the end of the movie to open his eyes of what's truly important to him. And the farm is important, but then I think the wife learns how important the farm is too. You know what I mean? It's all very...
We're not going to talk about the ending, but...
I mean, I just say this, all of this movie has this ongoing...
The ending.
This movie has this ongoing slow build towards everything kind of crumbling and falling. Like, the mother even mentions, we're good when things are good. Right? She's
But
like,
we can't handle.
But what happens? We
things
can't
are
handle
bad.
things when things start falling apart. We can't handle
And
it.
aren't so many people like that?
And that's what this movie leads to, every single thing falling apart.
Yeah, because
And can the family either overcome it and come together for it, or will the family fall apart with it?
or that's the
be
test of a good
dismantled.
marriage. That's a test of a truly good marriage, not an outwardly good marriage, right? It's easy to be good in your marriage when things are happy and fun, but it's difficult to be good when things are not happy.
So I think, without giving too much of the ending, the movie just moves towards all that. Like,
Yes.
you can see every little thing one by one getting worse. And, I mean, eventually they're living in a trailer with no water
Right.
because
at
of
one
his sort of
point.
the husband's stubborn ways, because he wanted to save $250. And again, they don't have a ton of money, so $250 is a lot of
It's
money.
a lot of money, yeah.
They're
Then
at
he
a
realizes.
they're at a point where they have no water, and now he's like using all their water bill towards watering his garden, not brushing their teeth and bathing. They're getting water from the river.
He's so focused on his goal of accomplishing it.
So before we've been going for a while, I think it's evident that we both kind of like this movie.
I love it. I loved it.
I think there's
love
two other
it.
things a couple other things worth pointing out before we move on. One, I'm not going to go too much into it, but I mentioned this right before we started recording. I did enjoy the sort of ongoing motif of urine and pee.
Oh, yeah. I did too. Oh my gosh. But
I mean, the kid wetting the bed, and then beyond that, and hiding the underwear. But
well,
but
I mean,
there's-
not to go into children, but one of our children does that. Has done that.
it's done it.
Well,
but
don't all kids do that at
but
some
they do
point?
it. But it's
So
beyond that.
Yeah.
It's ongoing. I think that's just an interesting one.
There
I
is a
think
urine motif.
I think
through
one
it,
could
and
digest
It's
it.
hilarious, and the little boy is awesome. Like,
yeah.
he is so good. I think, like, as a character,
Yeah, him and
his
his
acting,
his cowboy boots and
I mean, his sister. The sister's really good too, but
the sister's role, unfortunately,
he
she's
really
kind of
stands
overshadowed.
out by
She's
him.
overshadowed. In a movie that I think every person's role is phenomenal. The father, Jacob, who's also, the actor's also from Walking Dead. Like, he's phenomenal. The Korean actress who plays the wife, she's phenomenal. The grandmother is phenomenal. The kid is
The
phenomenal.
grandmother is wonderful.
Will Patton, as we mentioned, is phenomenal. Like, every performance is on
Everybody
point.
is good, and her performance is good, but the point of view is really from the little boy, right, of the movie.
Well,
Or
that's why I liked it.
no?
It's just point of view.
shifts?
This isn't a movie about the father or the grandmother or everybody. This is a movie about the family. But I think if anybody you could point to, the one, I guess, who is your, like, every man, every viewer, like, who is your, like, the son, the little boy is the person who, I guess I would say, for an American viewer, is the closest, who's living in all worlds. But I could see people who've had the immigrant experience maybe attaching more to the husband and wife.
Yeah,
And that.
definitely.
So that was one point, the urine. But then I think the other piece to kind of maybe close on is this whole idea of Minari. And
Minari, and I even asked you in the middle of the movie, like, what kind of seeds is that? What, she plants the
Well, the
Minari
grandmother
seeds. The grandmother brings Minari seeds.
Minari seeds, which is just a
It's like a green. It's like a herb or green.
a leafy
or
green
something.
herb that grows naturally, that doesn't need much care to grow. And it's somewhat of an invasive species in the fact that it can assimilate and grow all over the place. And it has
Which is
uses.
metaphorical.
Yeah, it has uses for all types of things.
Right.
You cook with it in Korean culture. You cook with it, as I explained in the movie. You cook with it. It has medicinal purposes.
She brings it and she goes way out by where she finds water and she plants the seeds and it. I think I was a little confused in it because they don't really go back to it right away until the end, right?
Well, over time, you see that it's growing.
It's growing.
And the father
So-
she even says to the father, like, I brought some Minari seeds. We should plant them. And he's like, I'll think about it.
Right.
I'll think about it. And she's like, I'm just going to go do it. And she does. But it's not till more the end of the movie that you see how it's sort of flourished in this environment.
And I did a little research
Yeah.
on the Minari because I wasn't 100% clear. Like, I got the whole thing, but I read that, and it made sense after I just read about it a little bit. So it's a Korean crop that fares better in its second season after it has already died and returned.
Okay.
So that to me was it was a metaphor, like you said, of assimilation and all that.
But it's also, as I keep
like,
saying, this is their fresh start. This is their second chance. Because they went to California first, and now they're at Arkansas.
Specifically for the movie but also in parallel to immigrant parents sowing the seeds for their children in America, so that when their children come, so life is difficult for them, but so life can be easier for their children.
I can see that for sure.
So that's kind of the metaphor of it, which I thought was a beautiful metaphor. It wasn't as easy for me to catch on during the movie to the metaphor of the Minari. I don't know why, but so I did have to do a little research.
Because you're sitting there and
that.
you're like, why is this movie called Minari?
Yeah. I wasn't 100% sure because there's so much other stuff that's going on. I knew, when she planted the Minari, I knew there was, huge symbolism there, but I didn't completely understand it, I guess.
And I think that's a good place to, and that's the role of the grandmother too. She brings that wisdom of experience, right? Because she's the one who understands that. She comes off as sort of aloof and rough.
Or just kind of not as nurturing, not as, but she's...
But she does
she's
play
very
the role.
wise.
She's the one who plays she brings that to the movie. She has a lot of key lines. There's a scene with the snake and the boys throwing rocks at the snake trying to get it to go away, and she's like, no, leave it be. Things are more dangerous when they're hidden and unseen, she says. They're more, we want to see the snake. And then, again, another metaphor of just, if we ignore the things and hide the things that are the problems in our life.
And in the ending, which we won't go into, is a huge metaphor of the Minari.
And again, I think that's what I said.
And once you put it all together, you're like, whoa.
Yeah, when the grandma shows up, that's sort of the catalyst that
really pushes the movie on.
That pushes the movie forward, pushes the family towards the things they need to deal with.
Yes.
And they're not speaking about the things that they're, quote, hiding,
right.
and ignoring. And she exposes them like the snake, she exposes them out in the open for all of them.
Right.
Whether it's the things she does or even the things that happens to her as well. So I think we're getting close to our ending time. Our what was this called? The giant
space lasers.
Lasers at Hidden Springs is wrapping up.
I'm at the end of my giant space laser.
No, I think we said we were going to cheer our glasses toast before, but this time we did it after again.
Cheers.
Like we did a flower crown. But I think it's probably safe to say, would you recommend this movie to individuals?
Absolutely. I loved it.
So right now,
I loved it.
I really liked it, and I think my discussion has made me, not only our discussion, but thinking about it a day later
Well, yeah, I
made
think
me like it more.
I'll be honest with you. When it ended, there were so many things I was so like, so many thoughts I had.
Yeah.
But when it ended, I was like, what? Of course, I act like that during many things that end.
Well, you gave me that look.
But I was like,
that's
what?
over?
It just
That's it?
ended like that? Like, okay.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't love the ending.
Which I did, but we like.
I did not. We like.
You like endings
I
that
like things to be explained.
that
at the
resolve it
end.
and say, here it is.
He likes, you know, more.
Where I like it to say, to leave it open for you to fill in some holes.
Yeah, I didn't love the ending, but the more I think about the symbolism and the more I think about
But the ending
title
shows you
and the-
everything you need to know.
That's true. It does. It does. But in the moment, I felt
But do you
That's
know?
it?
But they don't tell you. You
I
don't
wanted
know if
more.
things are going to be okay or not okay.
you don't know. No, you definitely don't know.
But
For sure.
But no, I definitely recommend it as well.
I recommend it.
Like I said, as I was watching it, I really liked it. It wasn't one of those movies that, as I'm watching it didn't. You're not sitting there going, "Oh yeah, this is an
Right.
Oscar contender.
No.
This is Best Picture."
But once you put it all together in your mind, you feel like, okay,
Because again, not that we only
this
watch.
is a really well thought out movie.
that we only watch like foreign type films.
And really
This
well
is
acted.
majority in Korean, but
It's
there's
in English
there's
too.
a lot of English in it. It's an English film
yeah, yeah,
with
yeah.
Korean subtitles. But you're watching it and you're like, this is really good. It's emotional. It's
But it's funny too.
it's funny. It's enjoyable. But as I've sat with it, I've definitely come to appreciate it more and more. I really liked it at the end. But now
And I didn't love the ending, but I
But now I
loved the
really
movie.
like it. I really like it. And it's going to be interesting as
general.
we get to the end here of what we think. I think that's what we'll have to do for our next, whatever we talk about next, which will probably be either Nomadland or Mank or a couple of the ones we're trying to watch before this.
Nobody. That's not a.
Well, nobody's
Oscar.
not an Oscar
Okay,
contender.
never mind.
No. But right now, I don't know if I've seen, out of what we've seen, well, I think on our next episode, we need to kind of declare what we think gets Best Picture.
Oh,
Or our
okay.
own personal Best Picture. Even
Do
though,
you know what I think? I honestly, and I haven't said this yet.
Actually, I know what Best Picture is. I don't know if the movie, I'll be honest right now, I don't know if I haven't seen a movie better than Sound of Metal yet.
I
But
love Sound of
don't-
Metal.
But again, they're all
how
different.
relevant is Minari right now in today's social change?
That was my last question, and then we got to end here.
Like social change. Okay,
Here's my-
Asian Americans being discriminated against right now because of COVID and
Yeah.
whatnot. Women, like this is really like two complex women characters, which the world needs and wants, especially Asian complex women characters.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my God, Arkansas.
I know all this stuff. No, I agree with you.
Not to get political,
No, I could
but
see. I could
Arkansas.
see Minari taking this. I think Sound of Metal.
It's just very
I
relevant.
think Sound of Metal
what
is
I'm
the
saying.
long shot. Though that is still my personal favorite.
I
out of everything we've
love
seen.
Sound of Metal.
For what I'm feeling is it's going to be either Minari versus Nomadland, which we'll probably watch.
We'll probably watch next Nomadland.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I think I love Sound of Metal better than Minari as well.
Yes,
But
I do
because
too.
of the such like social relevance of
That's what I
Minari,
mean,
I feel like that is
Like I said, if
what
I'm
should win.
if I'm a betting man, I go Minari or Nomadland.
Yeah.
If I go for my heart, the one that just really spoke to me, a movie hasn't moved me, and we'll never do a Sound of Metal episode probably because we saw that a while ago.
We saw it. It
But-
wouldn't be the night
But
before.
Sound of Metal.
Unless we watched it again.
Let's rewatch it. But Sound of Metal
I would rewatch the Sound of Metal.
Sound of Metal's been one of my favorite movies I've seen in a long time.
It was good. And we don't always agree. That we don't always like the same movies.
No.
That's for sure.
Well, listen, we're running long now, but you think I only like more of a kind of genre, over the top,
Over the top or gory.
gory thing.
And I'm not a fan of
But
gory.
I have a strong appreciation for films like Purple Noon and Minari and things of such.
Yeah, so we're 2 for 2 right now as far as liking the movies.
No,
but,
it's been a good pick. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
So I guess that's it. We're at our mark.
We're at our mark.
Our glasses are empty.
We gotta go. We need another beer.
We're either gonna get another round or go find
get some
food
pizza.
and go watch another movie. But this has been The Night Before.
And we'll see you next time.
All right. Bye, everybody.